to the session coordination, the linking system. In previous class we discussed about central nervous system. Central nervous system consists of brain and spinal cord. We already discussed about brain. Today let us going to discuss about spinal cord. Spinal cord, unlike the brain, spinal cord is also covered with three membranes called meninges. In brain we discuss about meninges. Here spinal cord is also covered with three membranes called meninges, dura mater, organoid membrane, pia mater. Dura, organoid and pia mater. And this spinal cord, the medulla oblongata, the hind brain, the medulla oblongata continues as a spinal cord and extend up to the stomach or the back of the stomach or lumbar region. And this spinal cord passes through a canal called neural canal or spinal canal, which is present inside the vertebral column. The vertebrae, the bones present in the vertebral column, we call them as vertebrae. The vertebrae or vertebral column protects the spinal cord. Not only the vertebral column, not only the meninges, cerebrospinal fluid, I already explained that a fluid flows between the outer and the middle membrane called cerebrospinal fluid. And this fluid protects the spinal cord as well as brain. This fluid flows not only in the spinal cord, it also flows through the brain. This fluid will protect the brain from mechanical shocks and blows. Even this fluid also protect the spinal cord. And vertebral column also protect the spinal cord. Now, in the previous class, Greeks thought that the only brain is a controlling center for all the controlling center of a human being or of any animal. They thought that the brain only controls all the activities of the body. But it was a erroneous concept. So the two other scientists called Leonardo da Vinci and Stephen Hales. And these two scientists, they conducted experiment on a frog. They came to one conclusion that frog has been survived even though the brain is damaged. Even though the brain is damaged. They poked a pin into the skin of the frog. The frog shows some muscular movement. The brain is completely damaged, but still the frog shows some muscular movement. And when the spinal cord is damaged, the frog has been died. The frog died when the spinal cord has damaged. From this they conclude that not only the brain, spinal cord also play a very important role, and it is a control center of its own. It controls certain activities of our body of its own. Previously we thought that spinal cord is a relay station sending the information from body parts to the brain to the body parts. And not only that, spinal cord also control the reflex action. We'll discuss what is meant by reflex action. Before that, let me explain about another type of nervous system called peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system consists of brain and spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system consists of nerves that arises from spinal cord, nerves that arises from the brain. The nerves that arises from the spinal cord, we call them as spinal nerves. They are of 31 pairs. And the nerves that arises from the brain, we call them as cranial nerves. They are called as 12 pairs. 31 plus 12 pairs, 43 pairs of nerves are present in peripheral nervous system. This peripheral nervous system controls the involuntary functions like internal organs, working of internal organs, blood vessels, cardiac muscles and smooth muscles. All these activities are involuntary. Not only that, that's why it is also called as autonomous nervous system. Peripheral nervous system is also called as autonomous nervous system. Not only controlling the involuntary actions, it also controls some voluntary actions like the control of muscles of skin and muscles of skeleton. Muscles of skin and muscles of skeleton. When you look into the transverse section of spinal cord, we can see that the white matter, this is called white matter. The white matter is peripheral, that means it is present outside, and the grey matter located central. When you see this grey matter, it looks like that a butterfly or letter H. And the upper part we call them as the front part we call them as ventral horns, and the back part we call them as dorsal horns. This is dorsal horn and this is ventral horns. From these horns, the nerves arises. The nerves arises. From these horns, nerves arises through dorsal root, and from this ventral horn, the nerves arise through ventral roots. Ventral roots, and this is called spinal canal or neural canal. There are two types. Charles Bell and Francisco Magandi found that the spinal nerves have two roots. Spinal nerves have how many roots? Two roots. These two scientists found that the nerves that arises from spinal cord has two connections or two roots. The front root we call it as ventral root, and the back root we call it as dorsal root. Through the ventral root, a nerve passes through the ventral root and another nerve passes through the dorsal root, and these roots have two different functions. The nerves that passes through different roots, we have two different function. For example, the nerves that passes through the front back dorsal root, it is sensory in function. It carries the messages of sensation. Then the nerve that passes through the ventral root, it is muscular in function. It controls the movement of our body parts. Two different functions we come across. The nerve that passes through the dorsal root have the function of messages of sensation. The nerve that passes through the ventral root have the functions of muscular activity. So two roots, this is and these two nerves join together to form the spinal nerve. That means the spinal nerve is a mixed nerve which has two different functions. One is sensory in function, another is motor in function. We already discussed about types of nerves: sensory nerves, motor nerves and mixed nerves. All the spinal nerves we call them as mixed nerve. All the spinal nerves are called as mixed nerve. Why? Because they have two different roots, two different neurons, and they have two different function. Now coming to the important function that is carried by spinal cord is reflex actions. What are reflex actions? Reflex actions are automatic, sudden, involuntary, spontaneous actions that occurs in our body. Here the brain is not involved in the reflex action. Brain is not, only spinal cord execute the reflex actions. These sudden involuntary actions, we call them as reflex action. The best example, when you touch a hot object, you withdraw your hand. The withdrawal of our hand is a reflex action. This reflex action saves our body from dangerous stimuli. They save us from dangerous stimuli. And how this reflex action occurs? What are the different nerves involved in the reflex action? How the information passes from brain or spinal cord, from body parts. The path that is followed by reflex action is called reflex arc. This reflex arc consists of so many parts. Receptors. Receptors are the specialized cells present in the sense organs. These receptors take out the stimuli, and this stimulus is sent to the sensory nerve. The sensory nerve sends the information to the spinal cord. Inside the spinal cord we have associate neurons or interneurons. These interneurons analyze the stimuli and generate response, and that response is carried through motor nerves and motor neurons, and these motor neurons send the information to effector organs. Effector organs may be a muscle or gland in our hand. In the case of touching the hot object, the effector organ is a muscle in our hand. The muscle will contract and we withdraw our hand. All this action takes place within the fraction of second. Now coming to the sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. These two, sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, are the part of autonomous nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system speed up the body functions, and parasympathetic nervous system slow down the body function. For example, when you enter into a dark room, immediately your eyes cannot focus the objects. Your pupil of the eye dilate the pupil of the eye so that more light passes into the eye and you can see the objects. When you come into the bright light, the pupil contracts and very little amount of light will be entered into your eyes. All these things are automatic functions in our body. This is under control of autonomous nervous system. Autonomous nervous system. Let us see the sympathetic nervous system. The ganglia near the vertebral column are connected to the spinal cord. The sympathetic nervous system is formed by the chain of ganglia on either side of vertebral column, whereas the parasympathetic system is formed by the nerves arising from the ganglia of brain and the posterior part of spinal cord. All together constitute the autonomous nervous system. Okay children, we'll meet in the next session.